let's just start off with the best quote. The best quote that I read from these first 2 chapters. Here it is. This is from like a checklist of things you should do. Stop worrying about whether you're a Nazi. If you decide to embark on this intellectual journey, a member of the woke mob will undoubtedly accuse you of being a Nazi. In this chapter, you'll acknowledge the ridiculously obvious truth that you are not, in fact, a Nazi. By truly owning this knowledge, you'll free yourself from the number one weapon that authoritarians have in their arsenal, shaming. I think there are worse weapons that authoritarians have than shame. Once you let go of this undeserved guilt, you'll remove the power from this loaded word by stopping such accusations to control the way you think. The shaming thing is so funny because I picture a Nazi like, you look very stupid today. I'm not going to actually kill you, but I will say you look a little chubby. You don't look good. I'm just saying you don't look good. You know what I mean? Just like a catty Nazi. Just a catty Nazi. Oh, you're going to wear that out? No, okay. I guess you're braver than I am. You know, like that's I guess the worst weapon that these authoritarians like Nazis have is that kind of shame, just that catty bitchiness of a Nazi. I mean, yeah, of course that's funny for a bunch of reasons. If a bunch of people are calling you a Nazi, I mean, yeah, I can find some common ground with Dave Rubin here. You don't want to be throwing Nazi around willy-nilly, okay? The Nazis, in my opinion, and I know that you probably disagree with that. That's the kind of person you are, that you think that they weren't that bad and that they were misunderstood. Like, you kind of believe that, which I find odd that you think that. You know, we don't want to be throwing that around willy-nilly. We don't want to be just throwing that at anybody. That's a reserved title for sure. But, you know, if people are saying, hey, some of this stuff that you've been saying lately seems a little on the Nazi side of things, you don't want to be like, I'm not worried about that. I read this book called Dave Rubin's Don't Burn This Book, and he says I shouldn't worry about it being a Nazi. I shouldn't worry. You're making me worry about it, and I don't like that. Here's another good quote. This is an interesting thing. This is an interesting thing about that I kind of learned about online, I guess, right-winger culture or whatever, is they say this a lot. This is another checklist of things you should do. Stop hating America, the West, and straight men. The West is a weird phrase to me. It's a weird phrase to me. And again, I know which side you are on, you out there. I know who you are. And I know which side you fall on this. Again, it's the same as the earlier stuff, the Nazi stuff. But has always been like a red flag phrase to me, the West, because I mean, first of all, just right off the bat, it has to be a slang term. It's not literal. I mean, the West, yes, the United States is in the West, but so is Cuba, Canada, Venezuela, Mexico, all of South America. I mean, and from what I understand, these guys hate those places. So they're not talking about that West. They're talking about some abstract idea of like Western civilization, meaning something vaguely having to do with the Enlightenment and white people or something like that. It's a very odd phrase that should raise a lot of red flags to anybody. But stop hating America, the West, and straight white men. By hate America, what I'm guessing he means, because I'm trying to think, like, who's just walking around America, they're like, I hate it here. This place sucks. I hate, oh, look at that. Look at my daily life that's limited to probably, for most people, 6 or 7 miles at most. I hate this. I hate this tiny piece of the country that I've chosen. and I hate overall all of it, all the states. I hate, I like what I guess they mean is what I guess he means, and I showed a friend this quote, and he said something along the lines of, this whole book, like all these quotes seem like they were either ghostwritten or some kind of a bot wrote them, because this is one of the few books that I've written where it's more exactly what I expected than I expected. I guess what they mean by stop hating America is don't criticize America. Like if America, if some people in the government decide to, I don't know, bomb some country or something, if you say, hey, I don't really like that, I don't want my name associated with that, and I don't want to be, I since this is some kind of a democracy or something, I don't like that. Don't do that. If you say something like that, you hate America, I guess, is how they view this. That's like the only guess that I have, because nothing else makes sense. Here's another interesting part of this book. This is all in chapter 1, by the way. Like chapter 1, you're just kind of barraged with, whoa, like we're in a different planet here. It really is. This book operates in a different universe. Here's another quote. You'll learn that the blue check Twitterati at Vox, BuzzFeed, and Huffington Post release ideologically driven articles presented as legitimate journalism. You'll no longer believe just because the staff of the New York Times and CNN once did their jobs, they also do it now. So he's saying basically, like, be careful. Be careful with the New York Times and Fox and BuzzFeed and all these places, because they got an agenda. These fools got an agenda, okay? But what's weird is you get that, and then just a couple pages away from that, just a couple flips of the page away from that quote, he says, do you secretly watch Fox News with your finger on the back button in case somebody enters the room? Do you methodically clear your browser history to erase all evidence of PragerU videos? If the answer to any of these questions is yes, then I'm afraid you're living in fear of the woke machine. You're politically closeted, and it's time to come out. This book will show you how. So wait a second. We got to be careful about these other sites, Huffington Post and all this crap, BuzzFeed and all this crap. We got to be careful because they got an agenda. New York Times and CNN got an agenda. But wait a second. But do you feel guilty about watching Fox News and PragerU? Come out of the closet, man. That's the kind of world that this book is operating in. I don't know. I was thinking the whole time, like, is this thing geared toward just 80 or 90-year-old people? Am I just missing the joke here? That this guy's just cashing in on a book that nobody but somebody who's very close to dying is going to read? Okay, so that's chapter 1. I would suggest reading this because it is a very interesting study in, I guess, how a certain segment of the population thinks. But the whole kind of deal, the whole bargain that he's giving you in chapter 1, the setup, is that you have two choices. Either like lunatic, ultra woke internet people who are all mean, who are all going to shame you and make you feel bad, or far right social media channels that are literally owned by like a fracking gazillionaire or something. Those are your only two options, and you got to pick it. And if you pick that woke one, those people are super annoying, which they are. You can't pick that one. They're annoying. Or you can be free. You can be super free and pick the far right channels on YouTube or whatever it is. There's no middle ground. There's no middle ground of like, hey, I kind of agree with things that a lot of people agree with. Like, I think maybe we should have a different healthcare system that works better and serves more people. I think maybe college should be free. I think maybe workplaces should have more worker co-ops where people feel a little bit more in control of their lives and their work, and maybe they'll make better decisions if it's more democratic. Like, no, that option just doesn't exist in Dave Rubin's in the world he's created in this book here, which is a fascinating world. There's one more thing that he mentions in chapter 1 that I want to talk about because I think it's really interesting, is that he has this story about how he comes... He's a closeted gay guy for a really long time. He's really ashamed that he's keeping this a secret. This secret is destroying him. Here we can kind of empathize with Dave Rubin. Nobody wants to keep their identity a secret or feel like they have to not be who they really are or be ashamed of themselves or something. So I was kind of rooting for Dave Rubin. I was like, I hope you solve this problem. I hope this gets better. I hope you figure out a way to allow yourself out of this box that you've shoved yourself into psychologically. And he does a good thing, which is he tells a friend of his, hey, I'm a gay guy. And by the way, he's living in New York in the early 2000s, which I feel like, there's a pretty healthy gay guy scene in New York during that time. I think he would have been okay, but it's everybody's different, and he for some reason he was just very ashamed of it. So he tells a friend, he's like, hey, I have a secret, I'm a gay guy. And he feels good about it. He's like, finally, I can just be myself. A weight's off my shoulder. And this is all true. This is all in the book. And the next day, 9/11 happens. And he feels like somehow 9/11 was caused by him telling his friend this thing. Telling somebody that, coming out of the closet, basically, in some way caused 9/11. And here, I really empathized with Dave at a whole nother level, because I've never really talked about this before, and this is actually pretty hard to talk about, something that I've kept secret for a really long time, and it's really hard. It's just really hard to talk about. But in the early 2000s, I was looking at an internet site, at a web page, and I came across a site that was a porno site, as they call it, porno site. And basically, I saw this video of it was a porn of, is like a brother and sister porn film. I call them films, by the way, because I think that they are art. And so this brother and sister, and I saw this, and I felt very ashamed of watching this, because this is a forbidden act of these people doing this. I shouldn't have any part in this, watching it or otherwise. So I saw this incestual porn film, and the next day, the Iraq War started, and there's no denying that. Well, this is what I thought at the time. There's no denying that I caused this by watching that movie, that pornographic film. And so, I empathize with Dave. I empathize with Dave on that one for sure. But it was like, reading that part, I was like, yeah, people are ripping this guy, but he is a person. He is a human being, and in a lot of ways, I feel like he just kind of, like a lot of things in life, just kind of found himself here. Just ended up here. This is a guy who wanted to be a comedian, wanted to be famous, wanted a following online. Didn't want to work some normal job where he's just wasting his life and feeling bored and feeling like he's not contributing anything. And this is where he kind of ended up. This is where the money was. This allowed him to sustain some kind of a show business career, So I feel empathy for this guy in a way that I think a lot of people don't. However, I still think that a lot of this stuff is crazy. So he has this list of things that, this is most of chapter 2, is he has this list of things that pushed him over to this side of, these kind of questionable characters that he's hanging out with now. These what would you call them? Sort of these right-wingers, these kind of online right-wingers. And he's like, how did I get here? And there's like 3 main things. And one of the things is when Ben Affleck went on Bill Maher. Bill Maher, okay. It's Ben Affleck, okay. He went on this guy's show. It was like this incident that kind of became a viral clip where Ben Affleck is like yelling at this guy Sam Harris, and he's saying that he's basically calling him an Islamophobe. But he says you're it's just gross. You're being gross, and Dave Rubin cites this as one of the main inspiration for him kind of crossing over to the dark side of the force. Now he's on and this is one of the incidents. Ben Affleck being kind of annoying on the Bill Maher show. And I remember watching this clip and I was like, I kind of wonder if Ben Affleck knows what he's talking about. I feel kind of like maybe somebody said to Ben Affleck, yeah, like this guy kind of has some questionable opinions, or he's taking a questionable direction when he talks about Islam, which, this is one of those things that unless you take the time to look into it, is vague and hard to understand. That basically, if you just took away the way Sam Harris is kind of saying, if you somehow just took away Islam, that everything would be, if you took away any religion, that somehow people's behavior would change, and that's like the deciding factor, instead of like geopolitics and how much money people have and what people's daily life is like, and all kinds of factors that are obviously more important. Blah, 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 right? No, I don't think he understood. I would guess he doesn't really understand all that stuff. He definitely didn't articulate it on this show. But to just kind of sweep in like, God, friggin' Ben Affleck was so annoying on that show. I'm going to be a hard right-winger now. A hard right-wing internet guy now. Because of a viral clip on some dumb talk show that nobody cares about. What I thought was that probably there's some collaborator on this book, or there would be some kind of substance to this book that I would kind of have to fact check things and look things up, and I would have to kind of, I don't know, rebut things and make opinions on things. But it's really kind of the opposite. Like, this book really is, and I think it's actually one of its strengths, which is kind of unfortunate, is that it is very, very simple. It is trying to create a world in which everything is very simple. There's a binary of choices politically. Everything is very simple. There are these mean people out there who still exist, who are everywhere, who are trying to take away your freedom of speech, who are trying to make you feel bad, and the only solution is him and his friends, basically. That's the only other option. It's a very simplified version of the world, and the writing is very, very, everything is very simple, which is, a lot of books written by people on the other side of the political spectrum can be very hard to understand. If you read like a Slavoj Žižek book, or that guy Bhaskar Sankara's book, they can be extremely difficult books to read. And this, I think, for people who are just like don't care about, or who are just trying to kind of figure out their identity, maybe like a political identity in the world, will look at this and say, I understand everything in this. This is all very easy to understand. And that's, I think, where I get kind of like weirded out by this book. I'm just like, yeah, this is really designed for people who don't care about kind of just the, not only politics, but kind of like how the world works in general, and don't want to spend too much time and can just quickly understand something. So that's what I'm getting from the first two chapters of this book. And I'm really kind of wondering what's going to be next, like what else is going to be in here. Because so far, it is strange. Like one of the Amazon reviews was like strange book, and it's strange. I think that's like the best way to put it. So those are the first 2 chapters of this Dave Rubin book, and I'll do this week by week reviewing this book and hopefully making some funny jokes about it. Okay, everybody. Holy Spirit, let's get excited. This is part 2 of this little series I'm doing where I'm reading this guy, David Rubin, his book. I wish I was friends with Dave Rubin because I would have mad good nicknames for him. You know, I'd be like, what up, Rubik's Cube? What up, Rube? What up, Rick Rubin? What are you doing? Coming up with beats for Jay-Z? You helping the Beastie Boys out? Rick Rubin? It would be endless fun on both of our parts. We would both like it equally, and he would enjoy it just as much as I do. So yeah, anyway, the last half, the previous episode, we looked at section 1 and 2 of this book. The book is called, what is it called again? Don't Burn This Book by Dave Rubin. And the first 2 chapters, if you watch that video that I did, I'm just kind of, the whole time I was thinking, yeah, this kind of seems like a ghostwriter wrote it, or maybe some kind of AI bot wrote it based on, right-wing YouTube videos or something. Now, these next 2 chapters, 3 and 4, I'm totally convinced that this was ghostwritten by somebody. Somebody was just showered with some cash. Here's some talking points, turn this into a book. And there's a lot of crazy stuff in the first 2 chapters. I'm not gonna lie, a lot of crazy stuff. I wanted to be fair about this book and not just ripping this guy and making fun of him and saying, ha ha ha, Dave Rubin's so dumb, like a lot of people do online. I was not taking that approach. I was like, I'm gonna look at this. I'm gonna give this a fair, open-minded look, okay? And I have to admit, there's a lot of crazy stuff, but the crazy stuff is really ramped up in chapter 3 and 4, as we're going to see. And this book exists in a different plane, a different sort of exists. It's a different existence. It's like Existenz, that Cronenberg movie. It's existing in some kind of a video game where this world is just left behind. So let's just get into it. Enough of my preamble. Let's get into it. Chapter 3 of the Dave Rubin book. What's it called? Live hard or die trying. Get rich or die trying. This chapter is called Think Freely or Die. Chapter 3. Here's the first sentence, and this struck my old ear. This struck my ear kind of weird. So let's read this. Free thinking is tricky. There isn't a roadmap that delivers you to the site of a set destination. There isn't a roadmap that delivers you to the site of a set destination. Another way to say this is there isn't a roadmap that delivers you to a set destination. And you might think I'm being kind of annoying or like nitpicky about this, but that kind of thing is like a giveaway. As someone who's written papers that I didn't want to write for money, this is a dead giveaway of somebody who was paid to write something and they're trying to kind of pad it out. It's a combination of trying to pad it out, get more length in there so it looks like you did more work, and just kind of not really paying attention. Like having something going on in the background. Maybe you're listening to, Hall & Oates or something, or you're listening to the My Favorite Murderer podcast or something like that. You just got something going on in the background, so you're going to write things that kind of ramble and don't make sense. Like, there isn't a roadmap that delivers you to the site of a set destination. Okay, so that was to me a giveaway. But it goes on, chapter 3. Also known, I call this chapter Get Rich or Die Trying, but I don't think that's the actual name. Okay, so in this one, he's talking about, he's got like Dave Rubin, from what I understand, as he explains in this section, he's got a political philosophy called liberalism. And he describes it a little bit here. The formal definition of the term is a, quote, political philosophy and ideology belonging to liberalism, in which primary emphasis is placed on securing the freedom of the individual by limiting the power of the government. This is classical liberalism. Said more simply, it's live and let live. Now, this is honestly, this is a fascinating book. This is a fascinating book if you're interested in this stuff, if you're interested in politics and history and stuff, because remember that phrase, the freedom of the individual by limiting the power of the government. Put a pin in that. Live and let live, he says. Put a pin in that, because it's going to come up later in a way that you will not believe. It's going to blow you away. And it's amazing. It's amazing. So let's keep going here. So he's talking about, so he has this political philosophy called classical liberalism, and he's going to give us in this chapter, live free or die trying, get rich or die trying. He's going to show us some issues and what the stances would be for somebody with this alleged political philosophy, okay? The first one is drugs. He talks about how he's done drugs before. Pretty cool. I would think that Dave Rubin is cool. Remember when I was talking about how I would call him Rubik's Cube and Rick Rubin and all that stuff? That would be cool. Like, I could see myself being bros with Dave Rubin if he would just kind of abandon all this crazy stuff. So he's done drugs, had a good time, whatever. But then he goes into this. Besides, we already have two declassified drugs that are far more dangerous, alcohol and nicotine. Okay, he's talking about marijuana here. I agree. Alcohol and nicotine, you could definitely make a case, especially in the case of alcohol, that it's worse. So, agreed. Dave Rubin agreed. But then he keeps going. The catch is that this libertarian-inspired view falls apart when it starts to include Schedule 1 substances. Wait a second, Schedule 1? That sounds like government talk. Substances such as crack and heroin, which are obviously very cool. Now, he says, very different beasts. These substances are highly addictive and frequently fatal, and can inspire a whole host of criminal activity along the way, which is where the lightest possible touch of government comes into play. Interesting. So now the live and let live philosophy comes into a little bit of conflict with this idea that maybe, we live in a kind of complex network where you kind of have to look at things with a little more nuance, maybe. Interesting. So he's probably going to take this in I would say a very kind of deep direction. He's going to take this in a deep direction, I think. In these instances, I'm reluctantly okay for the state to make a judgment call, because freedom can't be a free-for-all. Sure, we want to give people maximum liberties, but we also don't want a Breaking Bad episode happening next door. Speak for yourself. Speak for yourself. That show got huge ratings. I would love that next door. Got a spin-off too, Dave. Come on, you're a show business guy. Why wouldn't you want that next door? With half of the local population whacked out on meth, that's not the key to a healthy, functioning society. Very interesting. Very interesting. So what he's saying here is that, the most important thing is people being free to do what they want. People need to be free to do what they want, okay? But there can be problems. There can be problems with that. Okay, there can be problems with that. People could die. People could get sick, Another example of this would be, something like tens of thousands of people dying because, I don't know, like they don't have health insurance or something like that, I'm just saying, Dave, we're getting into more detailed territory here, where I feel like if a ghostwriter didn't write this book, or if somebody who actually cared about this stuff wrote that book, they would be like, ooh, this is going to be tough to make this case. I know the hardcore libertarians will find this compromise a hard pill to swallow, pun intended, but we can go to where the evidence takes us. As we've repeated, this might be my favorite part of the whole book. As we've repeatedly seen, human beings have a track record of succumbing to indulgence. Human beings do have a track record of succumbing to indulgence. They love indulgence. People love things that are pleasurable. It's very weird. Succumbing to indulgence. That's another red flag that somebody wrote this. That somebody in India wrote this for $35 to $45. This entire book. Succumbing to indulgence. And then going off the rails into oblivion. Here it is. Ready for this? Just look at the likes of Whitney Houston, Amy Winehouse, Michael Jackson, Philip Seymour Hoffman, Heath Ledger, and Prince. In other words, if you want to be a hugely successful artist, become a drug addict, because these are all people that we admire. These are all people that we admire to a ridiculous degree. So I guess that's what he's saying. Want to be good? Want to be a great artist? Get addicted to drugs, which I totally agree with. Well, we can't stop people from obtaining illegal drugs. Well, okay. So he goes on and on, just kind of backing away from his original claim, which was that we got to maximize individual liberties, except for a lot of them. Here's the next issue that he goes into. Remember, this whole chapter is a series of issues that he's giving you his kind of take on as someone with this political philosophy called classical liberal. Gay marriage is the next one. Okay, so I had to actually step away and make sure that I read this correctly. And I came back and I was like, yeah, we're doing this. We're doing this. We're going here. So he's talking about, okay, I'll just set this up. This is something that relates back to the First Amendment, which clearly sets out the importance of freedom of religion and assembly for everyone, including those you disagree with. This is what it means to be equal. No special treatment for anyone. Okay. Seems semi-reasonable so far. I think I agree with this. I don't know where you're going, but I think I agree with this. Think of it this way, he says. I wouldn't force a Jewish painter to take the commissions of Hitler imagery from a Nazi sympathizer. I wouldn't force a Jewish painter to take commissions of Hitler imagery from a Nazi sympathizer. And I bet you wouldn't either. You don't know me, Dave. That's exactly the type of thing that I do and enjoy. That's the kind of, I just like to create interesting situations and just see where it goes. I'll throw a little get together, 5 or 6 people, and there'll be some Jews and some Nazis. I'll be like, what's going to happen? And I have hidden cameras and stuff. Nor would I make it mandatory for a historically black church to hold an event for white supremacists. This isn't rocket science, people. Okay, so where are we going next? Remember, this is the gay marriage section, so where are we going next? I also wouldn't take legal action against a Christian baker if the baker politely refused to create, which even that part isn't true. If you read the whole story about that cake situation, that dumb cake story, the polite part isn't even true. He's trying to pad this thing. Whoever wrote this is trying to pad this thing as much as possible, trying to push to this side, this viewpoint as much as possible, and they can't even get that right. Refused to create my rainbow-themed wedding cake. Let's read this part again. I also wouldn't take legal action against a Christian baker if the baker politely refused by shouting a Bible verse at them to create my rainbow-themed wedding cake. Okay, now we get into like the comedy side of Dave Rubin, which he kind of, this is an aside, okay? But he kind of brushes up against an interesting bit that he actually does pretty well, which is I'm covering a really quote unquote important topic. I'm covering a hot button issue. I'm covering a real hot button Bill Maher style issue. But then I slip in a mundane fact from my life to kind of show you like everything's goofy. Like just the biggest issue that people argue about and courts have hearings and cases about. But then I'll bust into something just totally unrelated and mundane. So here, we'll see this format that he does, which I actually think has potential, comedy potential. I also wouldn't take legal action against a Christian baker if the baker politely refused to create my rainbow-themed wedding cake. For the record, we had a simple lemon and rosemary cake at the wedding. So, comedy-wise, not a bad format. You just break into a really stupid, mundane thing, and you're like, it's sort of like almost like a Chevy Chase style, like, I'm just a narcissistic dingus at my heart. You know, the way he's like just always thinking about the details of his own little kind of dumb life, you know? I like it. It could be good. Okay, so this really, like, I don't want to do one of these videos where it's just like, can you believe what he said? Can you believe what he just said? But I can't figure out another way that he could mean this besides he thinks that a Nazi sympathizer, that there's some kind of equivalency to a Nazi sympathizer coming into a painter's workshop or something with pictures of Hitler and saying, hey, can you please paint this guy for me? A Jewish painter, hey, can you please paint this guy who tried to exterminate your entire race? Can you please paint him for me? That's forcing him to do that is equivalent to like a civil rights thing with a gay couple asking for a cake where there's like two female-looking like statuettes on top of the cake. That's like the only way I can read this. Like there's no other way. He's like, look. That's the other thing. The other thing about this is that you could totally apply this to if a guy came in and he's like, hey, I have this cake for my black wedding where I'm a black guy and I'm marrying a black lady and I want that on the cake. I mean, he probably wouldn't put black guy on the cake, but it would be the names of two people who are black who are getting married. You could, using the same kind of stuff that he's talking about here, you could apply the exact same rule that he's saying, which is that you can't force people to do things that they don't like. Unfortunately, as we witnessed with the legal case against Melissa and Aaron Klein, blah, 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 those are the cake people, he said, oh, here's the weird, this is honestly, this one threw me too. And this is another, to me, a hint. This can't be, oh boy, man. Oh, geez. Like, this can't be, somebody could not have written this in any kind of way where they were kind of looking things up and paying attention. The crucial distinction, this is the crucial distinction. Oh, wait, hold on. Unfortunately, as we witnessed in the legal case against Melissa and Aaron Klein, the now infamous wedding cake bakers, or non-bakers as it were, progressives have decided that if you don't run your business the way they want you to, for example, if you are having a black wedding and you want two black names on it, the names of two black people on a cake, you can't force people to do that. They will take legal action against you. Without relitigating the whole affair, okay, definitely not going to relitigate the whole affair. It's important to note that the Kleins didn't refuse service to the gay couple. They just refused a custom order of a cake. They didn't refuse service to the gay couple. They just refused a custom order of a cake. So the custom order of the cake was two brides, right? They didn't want to make a cake with two brides on it. So they're refusing service to people based on their sexual orientation. And Dave Rubin's like, no, they just didn't want to make a certain kind of cake. This is a crucial distinction because refusing service based on immutable characteristics might have been a violation of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which ended segregation and employment discrimination on the basis of Although sexuality is not specifically mentioned here, there could have been a legal case to be had. I mean, I read about this case, and these people were fined $130,000. They had to appeal, and I think eventually the Supreme Court sent it back. They're going to rehear the case, I think. But he's saying they might have had a case. Well, they won the case in that lower court. They were fined. The cake place was fined $130,000. They might have had a case. You might have had a case. Yeah, we won $130,000. Good luck. Good luck with your quote-unquote case. And then Dave Rubin walks away. Rubik's Cube walks away. This overreaction is precisely the sort of irrational behavior we've been witnessing from the overzealous left in recent years. Its adherents want any form of dissent to be classified as criminal act and punishable by law. Again, just any form of dissent. Like, for example, if my cake store doesn't like black people and we don't want to put black people's names on the cake, that's our right. That's our right, okay? It's the cake place would be called White Names Only Cake. White weddings only cake. But instead, it doesn't mean like white wedding, like everybody's wearing white. It's like white people. This overreaction is, not that part. In a liberal society, people have the right to hold different beliefs than yours. That right is what we must protect above all else. Okay. So that was an interesting one. Next, we go into the next issue. Next issue. Next issue. Immigration. Here's how it starts. I wouldn't dream of getting off a flight into another country, swaggering up to the... What the fuck, Dave, dude? I do want to be friends with Dave now. Because I want to know what this dude seems like fun, honestly. I wouldn't dream of getting off a flight into another country, swaggering up to the immigration office, just pimp walking, just pimp stepping up to the immigration officer and demanding permanent residency. This would make me an entitled buffoon who fulfills all the cliche of the brash, vulgar American. Here we go. It'd also be hugely unfair to dump myself. It'd also be unfair to dump myself on the hardworking citizens of a foreign land. To dump myself. Dave Rubin sees immigration as one dumping oneself on the hardworking citizens of a foreign land. I mean, just to whatever, this doesn't even need to be said, but here's a statistic that might help. Immigrants pay more than $90 billion in taxes every year and receive only $5 billion in welfare. Without their contributions to the public treasury, the economy would suffer enormous losses. I'll put a link to that. If I can remember to put a link, which I probably can't, but you can look it up. That's stats everywhere. Not that we need to say that, but dumping oneself, these people dumping them, these human beings, dumping themselves. Wait, I thought you were like an individual guy who every person is a unique individual. But yeah, but these people are just dumping that. These people are trash, dumping themselves. It's like a trash can grows arms and then picks itself up and dumps itself on a country. Holy moly. Who've spent decades building their infrastructure and refining their culture through blood, sweat, tears, and taxation, to which I've contributed absolutely nothing. Ooh boy. Yeah-ooh. We're getting into rough waters here. Ay. And it pretty much goes on. The immigration section is pretty much summarizes it. So let's go. You're just dumping yourself. You're trash, dumping yourself in a country, and it's gross. Abortion is the next one. Okay, this is kind of interesting. Dave Rubin is going to adopt a kid with his husband. He's a gay dude, and he's got a husband, and they're looking to adopt. And he's talking about the different ways you could do that. He might get his sister to carry the baby. They might have an anonymous egg donor, yada yada, blah blah blah, blah 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 blah. But this, he kind of explains, showed him the unique beauty of a child and where life begins and all this stuff. Before this process started, I'd always been solidly pro-choice. Though in the last 2 years or so, I've begun to describe myself as begrudgingly pro-choice. Begrudgingly pro-choice. That's sort of a weird being begrudging about a choice when you're like, human freedom is the most important thing, individual freedom, but I'm kind of begrudgingly letting people choose stuff. After learning more about the biology of gestation and the process of abortion, and seeing the left fetishize it in a way that I'm not comfortable with. And then he gives these examples. There are countless videos on YouTube of women celebrating their terminations, while organizations such as Shout Your Abortion encourages Twitter users to do the same with carefree abandon. Of course, using colorful, eye-catching images. What I love about this is that this is incredibly common. I have known women who have been close friends with who have gotten abortions. And every story I hear, they go to get an abortion, right? And they run out and they're like, this is a joke, and I'm going to do a joke video on TikTok about it now. Like, that's the more, like, what he's describing, this shout your abortion thing. This is the most common way that people do this. Like, he's not describing an exception. This is the rule. People are always... Like, when you go to, like, an abortion clinic or Planned Parenthood or whatever to terminate a pregnancy, it's just like a goofy, wacky thing that people are joking about most of the time. It's a very silly... it's like the Adam Sandler movies. Like, they have that kind of vibe of just, like, goofing around. You know what I mean? So he is describing something in what I would call perfectly good faith here. Another woman proudly declared, I wasn't ready to start over again. People can call it selfish or sinful, but at the end of the day, they're not the one tending to my kids. Again, a guy who's all for personal, people should do whatever they want, live and let live. Kind of weird he's got a problem with this. Might have something to do, I wonder if it has anything to do with, like, funding sources for this stuff. Probably not. Free speech. Free speech is the next one. My stance on this isn't because I enjoy listening to anti-Semite propaganda or conspiracy. It always comes back to the Nazis with fucking Dave Rubin, or conspiracy theories spewed by true racists, but because I'm a free speech absolutist. This is funny because there's a couple chapters back, one of the first chapters, he was whining and moaning about some YouTuber talking about some guy he hated on Fox News, and he was like, this is ridiculous. Why is he talking about this guy on Fox News in such a mean way? Yet he's a free speech absolutist. So there you go, there's that. Gun control, literally nothing interesting or funny to say about gun control. It's like exactly what you would expect. Then we get to a pretty interesting one. Trans issues. Oh boy. Oh yeah. This one's good. This one's good. I'm going to send Dave Rubin an email because I do want to be bros with him. When I was a boy, I wanted to be a Decepticon named Soundwave. Pretty tight Decepticon. I wonder where he's going with this. When I was a boy, I wanted to be a Decepticon named Soundwave. And the title of this thing is called Trans Issues. I mean, I'm already sold on whatever. I'm already sold on whatever he's going to say next, just with this setup. Alas, medical science in the 1980s wasn't advanced enough to swap my body for that of a futuristic robot that turned itself into a cassette player. That is tight. That is tight. This is exactly, he's making an exact parallel to trans people. This devastated the 6-year-old me. This kind of endears me to Dave Rubin, that he's just like, I picture this little kid, this little gay kid, 6-year-old living in, like, I don't know, the Midwest somewhere in the 1980s, and he's just like, when will medical science reach the point when I can become a Decepticon? He's just obsessing about it. He's looking in the mirror. He's just got like he's got this like robot dysphoria. Like he just can't stop. Like he looks at his dick and he looks at his like his butthole in his body, and he's just like, this is non-robotic. None of this is a robot, and none of this is ever going to transform into anything. And he's just super, super high-level dysphoria. He's just really obsessing about it all the time, and it's just really bad. This devastated the 6-year-old me for at least 48 hours, maybe even a bit longer. Robot dysphoria, by the way. Let's remember that. But by the time I became an adult, I was seriously happy that I wasn't given the option at all. Dave Rubin was not given the option to become a robot. He's like, shit. Unbelievable. Gotta live in this town as a human. First, I was way too young to make such a big decision. Ooh, I wonder where this is going. Second, which public... Dave, you're not gonna do that. You're not gonna do this to me, Dave. You're not gonna do me like that, Dave. Dave, I'm gonna look... Oh, Dave. Second, which public bathroom does a transformer even use these days? If I was taking a dump, okay? Will you listen to me? If I was taking a dump in a public bathroom and Bumblebee, you know what I mean, walked in, I would be like, you know what? Taking this dump is not the most important thing right now. There's a transformer in here. And nice to meet you, Bumblebee. Can I get a picture with you? Can I post on my social media about this? It's a little bit of an aside, but you get what I'm saying. So, okay, should I put in the serious bit about this, that like that, you know, if a young kid goes on like hormone blockers or something, I think everybody knows this now. It's not just some willy-nilly thing. It's like the kid has to go see like a psychologist, and then they have to go to a series of doctors, and then they have to confirm that this is the right thing to do, and they have to observe the kid's behavior, and blah blah blah. It's like a long process where it's determined by professionals that whatever they do, hormone blockers or whatever it is the next best medical step. But I feel like I'm debunking some like something that's kind of like everybody kind of knows already. That's another thing about this book, why I think it might be ghostwritten, because it's all like 5-year-old material, you know? You know what I mean? It's like if Dave Chappelle got up on stage and he's like, Rick James, hey, let's do all the Rick James bit. And people are like, boo, you suck, come up with new stuff. This is ridiculous. Hey, let me just do my the R. Kelly pee on you bit again. People are like, that's 5 years old. I paid $100 for the ticket to this stupid show. They're throwing stuff at Dave Chappelle. Yeah, this is all like 5 or 6-year-old material. Okay, so that's the trans thing. I mean, it's like absolute All this stuff is like, it's exactly what you expect, only just worse. Just kind of like not as crafty or slick, which is what I thought it was going to be. Like, I thought it was going to be more like, let's take these ideas, these kind of these old ideas that everybody's kind of already moved past, and let's put a new shine on them, put a twist on them that makes them more difficult to talk about or something, or to rebut. Oh, here's another one about economics. I just thought this was a funny little quote. So he worked as an intern, actually, on The Daily Show. 20 years later, the lessons from this internship remain one of the main reasons why I won't hire unpaid interns for his show, that's cool. He doesn't hire unpaid interns. Cool. Yeah, pay these fools. Most of these people got to pay for stuff. They got to pay for shit. They live somewhere. They eat food, and all that stuff costs money. So yeah, maybe pay them if they're doing work for you. Despite getting generous offers from people all over the country. Ooh, humble brag. He's like, ooh, everybody wants to work for me for free. Ooh, Dave, okay, I see you. Quite frankly, I just don't think it's fair to recruit staff at zero cost when you can afford to pay them a semi-decent salary, even if it's just for a few weeks. Okay. So far, we're okay. We can find a little common ground here. Then, does this mean I support a federally enforced minimum wage of $15 an hour? Absolutely not. When it comes to economic policy, the state should mind its own business and allow people to manage their finances with maximum control. Interesting that this is probably the kind of people that fund these like right-wing YouTube channels are usually like some oil heir or somebody who it usually has something to do with like fracking and oil and stuff. And it's weird that the people who kind of pay these people, like Dave Rubin and Ben Shapiro and all these guys, their interests kind of align of not wanting to pay taxes or pay minimum wages and all this stuff. Very, very interesting. Most people don't agree with that. Most people think that you should, if somebody's going to work for you and spend the majority of their day doing stuff, they should be able to live somewhere, have a home, be able to shelter themselves from the elements. The economics part is obviously deep and great. Okay, so that's pretty much it. What else does he talk about here? Yeah, it's economics. What's the next one? Foreign policy. Really nothing worth even talking about or joking about in that section. If you really want to read it, go for it. Go ahead. Have a good time. Section 4. It never ends. It never ends with this. Section 4, don't worry, you're not a Nazi. Don't worry, so this was young Dave Rubin. When he didn't have robot dysphoria, when he wasn't just indulging in his robot dysphoria, he was looking in his mirror, 6-year-old Dave Rubin. He's like, you're not a Nazi. You're not a Nazi. Am I a Nazi? No. But their boots, their outfits though were no. But Jews, very weird. Jews are very no. You're not. Dave, you're not. Come on, we're gonna be a robot one day. One day they're gonna make us a robot, Dave, a Nazi robot. No. So let me say this one more time for the record. You are not a Nazi. Let's look at the evidence. Exhibit A. I'm guessing you're no fan of socialism. Dave, what the fuck? I'm guessing you're no fan of socialism, which was a founding principle of the Nazi movement. This is what the Nazis are known for, actually. Wanting to have universal health care, worker co-ops, what else is like modern socialist crap? Usually no war, like less foreign wars. That's a tough one for the Nazis. Free college. The Nazis were all about free college, right? But there was something else that they were really into too. I can't remember. I'm a history dum-dum, but I recall something that they're more known for. You know what I mean? But he's saying that they were socialists, and if they said they were socialists, they probably were, because from what I understand, Nazis are pretty truthful, like in general. Oh, wait a second. Nazi is an acronym for the National Socialist German Workers' Party. Oh, shit. Damn, that really changes the game here. That really changes the game. What would be a funny thing to compare this to? Let me see if my slow brain can think of a joke. So this is like the monkeys, that band, the Monkeys, were actual monkeys, I guess, would be like the joke here. Something like that. You fill in the joke. I don't have time for this crap. These days, Nazism gets associated with conservatism. What? Oh man, this These days, Nazism gets associated with conservatism at the drop of a hat, but historically it stems from the left. Adolf Hitler, an art-loving vegetarian who seized power by wooing voters away from Germany's Social Democrat and Communist parties. Yeah, this definitely proves that Hitler was kind of a leftist. He didn't eat meat, and he loved art. Oh, and also at one point during all this Nazi talk, he works in a hashtag. Though if you do burn this book, please take a picture of it and use hashtag don't burn this book on Instagram. You gotta kind of hand it to him. It's a good little publicity gag. Dave, I hope somebody does that for you. I really do. Okay? He also goes into, I think Dave Rubin is Jewish. He goes into his ancestry. My uncle's father, Joseph Berger, suffered a horrendous fate after real Nazis invaded his native Poland. Okay, so they were involved in the Holocaust. Along with his wife and their 2 daughters, they were rounded up and forced to relocate to a squalid ghetto with 300,000 other Jews, a space roughly 10 blocks wide with a crude perimeter fence. Dave had ancestors who were Jews who were rounded up during the Holocaust. I think some of them were killed too. I mean, there were parts of this book that I just had to skip over because it was just too much. Yeah. Okay. So his grandfather or my uncle's father. Okay. So his family was killed. I would love to see, what's his name, Joseph Berger, talk to Dave Rubin and see what he would have to say about this book. Hey, Joseph Berger, you know some of the stuff that's been going on lately that a lot of these YouTube people are kind of falling on the side of. What do you think about that? What do you think? Does this raise any alarm bells? Should we maybe kind of stay away from stuff that it comes anywhere close to this kind of thinking? I wonder what he would think about that. So there it is. Chapter 3 and 4 of Don't Burn This Book. I do think that what I'm doing now has become a sort of Holly Herndon performance art piece where I'm reading the work of an AI as some sort of joke, and I'm totally fine with that, and I love it. And the next section, how many more chapters? Oh my god, this is actually a pretty long book. Might have to cut this bit a little bit short. But yeah, there you go. Some good ideas, some ideas that you should adopt. And if you did not like this video, please hashtag I don't like RM Brown video, print out a screenshot of it and burn it and hashtag it on Twitter and Facebook and Steam. All right, so I'll see you guys. Oh, subscribe to I'm doing a podcast version of this too. Trying to figure that out. And there's lots of goofing around and experimental stuff on the podcast. So subscribe to it in some way if I set up lip sync correctly, which I'm not sure if I did. You're probably thinking like, wow, this book has some really crazy stuff in it. Well, it somehow gets crazier in this section, and I don't know if they're going to change this or they're going to fix this or whether this was intentional or not, but there's a huge error in this book. There's a huge error in this book that I don't know how this got past whoever wrote it or whoever fact-checked it or did a proof of it or whatever, but I'll show you. We'll start with that, okay? So this next section, we did the first 4 chapters, and now we're on chapter 5. This one's called Check Your Facts, Not Your Privilege.
Check your facts, not your
The kind of narrative of this book, the story of this book, is that Dave Rubin was like this leftist, borderline communist guy. I made that part up, but the story is he's a leftist, and then he is exposed to all these truthful things, and he's like, ooh, I gotta go over the other side because there's just way more truth over there. And one of the defining events that pushed him over to this other side was an interview he did on the Dave Rubin program, where he had this guy, Larry Elder, on.
The idea that a racist white cop and shooting unarmed black people is a peril to black people is BS. It's complete and total BS.
And here's a little quote. This is him talking about the interview. Although I was prepared on one level, as the host asking all the questions, nothing could have prepared me for the red pill that Larry was going to put in my mouth and force me to swallow. Okay, so this is a big deal. This is a defining moment. This is part of the origin story of this comic book superhero known as David Rubin, okay? It's a big defining event. So this guy, Larry Elder, comes on the show. Do I really need to describe who Larry Elder is? We'll talk about this later, but he's just a right-wing guy. So he has this quote. This is in the book. I'll read this, and then I'm going to show this on the screen, where this guy, Larry Elder, starts to red pill David Rubin, okay? And they're talking about basically police action toward black people. And here's the quote. This is where a lot of questions come up for me on Dave Rubin, okay? Half the homicides in this country are committed by and against black people. Okay, you got that? Half the homicides in this country are committed by and against black people. Last year, there were 14,000 homicides. 96% of them were black on black. Last year, I'll read it again. Last year, there were 14,000 homicides. 96% of them were black on black. This is not this is not what this guy actually said. Let's watch the actual interview.
Black people, half the homicides in this country are committed by and against black people. Last year, there were 14,000 homicides, not talking about suicides, I'm talking about homicides. Mm-hmm. Half of them were black, half of them were black. 96% of them black on black of that 7,000.
Last year, there were 14,000 homicides, not talking about suicides. Half of them were black. Okay? That's the part that was left out.
Half of them were black.
So what the quote in the book is saying is that there were 14,000 homicides, and basically 13,000 or whatever 96% of them is were black on black, which is totally not true. Half of them were black on black. So, this I'm willing to give whoever wrote this, whatever AI or if Dave Rubin himself wrote this book, I'm willing to say okay, this was just a mistake. They left out conveniently the extremely important part of half of them were black. Half of those 14,000 homicides were black.
Half of them were black.
And 96% of that half were black on black, which is in every murder statistic. You can look at the FBI statistics. People who murder each other are usually the same race. So it's not unique to black people. That's an aside. What's accidentally or intentionally being wrote in the book is that of basically all the homicides in 2015 were black people. Okay, a little bit of an aside here, but I found this really interesting looking at these 2015 homicide statistics. The amount of men committing, this is like the really fascinating statistic, the amount of men committing homicides is like 10 times, over 10 times, I think actually, regardless of race, 10 times the amount of homicides as women. So that throws another wrench in these guys' arguments, because if you're gonna go by like homicide statistics, you would have to say, actually, the real problem is dudes. The real problem is dudes, has really nothing to do with the race. Women are kind of taking it easy on killing each other. But that's kind of very inconvenient for their arguments, I feel like. So just a little bit of an aside there. Okay, so the next section, he starts going again into these like rapid fire issues where he just debunks issues. And I'll give you an example of one. There's a bunch of them. There's gun control, climate change, a bunch of stuff. And one of them is wage gap. And I'll read you some of this. There are two things that could survive a nuclear war: cockroaches and the myth of the gender pay gap. Despite being debunked by countless economists, many of whom are women, by the way, it's a statistical lie that never dies.
A statistical lie?
So let's check the facts. I guess he's saying that it's a statistic that's being used to lie. So let's check the facts. First, the claim women earn 79 cents for every man's dollar is pure spin. The figure is an aggregate one, which compares the median of all women's earnings with the equivalent for all men. But this ignores job type, experience, and hours worked. Okay, so again, you haven't debunked a wage gap. You're just saying that there's a cause of the wage gap. We'll go into that more in a second. But again, this is not despite being debunked by countless economists, no economist has debunked the wage gap. No economist is like, there's no wage gap. It's just like, why is there a wage gap? When these factors are, which I'll read you a study in a second. When these factors are considered, the so-called gap disappears faster than conservative content on Twitter. The Bureau of Labor Statistics shows that men... Okay, this one's kind of funny, actually. The Bureau of Labor Statistics shows that men work longer hours. In 2017, men worked an average of 8.4 hours compared... Oh, this is a drastic different number. Compared to 7.8 hours for women. This is why men are making so much more money. They work an extra 40 minutes. Let's take a look at this study, actually. So he's setting up this thing of like, the wage gap, it's just because women make different choices. They make different choices. It's their fault. It's their fault. This is a study, you can look this up. It's called Children and Gender Inequality, Evidence from Denmark, 1980 to 2013. So it's a long-ass study. And they found out that basically when a woman has a child, on average, it's a 20% drop in long run, like the rest of her life pretty much, income. So she's going to make 20% less than if she didn't have a baby. So this is actually kind of course, this is a gender pay gap. Again, you haven't debunked anything. But this is like a bigger problem than even the kind of thing that he's setting up of just like, because what he's setting up is basically like he thinks that there are people who think that there's just companies are mean and they're like, hey, you're a woman. Hey, woman. A woman comes up, they're like, hey, you woman, you only get 70% because you're a girl. You're a girl and you got that long hair and that dress and that skirt. That hoop skirt from the 50s. So you get paid 70% less. And then a guy comes and they're like, 100% for you, dude. And they high five and they go to work. But I don't think anybody thinks that. It's just like, it's more, there's a gap. Women are making less overall. What's the deal? What's the deal there? And they found out that a big reason is because of women having children. And Dave Rubin even mentions this. But he spins it in an interesting way. Women also make different life choices. They're the only gender that can get pregnant. And he says, please don't cancel me. So they frequently choose to start families and raise children. Interesting. The only thing, though, is that really a choice? I mean, if you're born a woman, you're going to have some measure of imperative to have a kid. And if you have that kid, you're facing a 20% drop in income. I mean, this is more like, this puts Dave into even a more difficult spot than if he were defeating the straw man we were talking about, because now this is a critique of a system. Now we're saying the labor market rewards women for not having kids financially. Also, I guess is a little bit ironic because earlier they were talking about the importance of a family, having a family. Dave is like begrudgingly pro-choice, all this stuff. And now and of course it's like everything's free market. The free market is perfect, but here's a free market that disincentivizes having children. Something that's supposed to be, having children is supposed to be this beautiful experience. So it's supposed to be one of the greatest things that can happen to a person. And you're creating a new life, bringing new life into the world. Oh, by the way, it's completely disincentivized in the labor market. So, this is sort of like how all of these things go. All these little kind of talking points that he goes through. And the thing that I was thinking about this, what's kind of funny about this and a little bit ironic about this book, it's a fascinating book, actually. And I think the most interesting thing about it is that he's setting up this thing of, hey, we need to be free. We need to be free to think whatever we want, to say and express ourselves however we want. And the free market of ideas to create your own individual view of the world and to be able to talk about it. But it just so happens that mine are all the exact right-wing talking points. I mean, literally, when I was doing research for this, all these guys, all the people that he mentions in this and him, all their stuff matches exactly every right-wing think tank website out there on the internet. It's all exactly the same. So all this like free market of ideas stuff is somehow these open-minded guys are all funneling into the exact same ideas. Ones that seem to just be in lockstep, sheepish, in line with all this stuff. It's genius. It's genius, and it's my philosophy. This book has me sold. Thank you, David Rubin. Okay, and now here it is, the stunning conclusion to my review of Dave Rubin's book. What is this book called? I always blank every time. Old Man in the Sea by Dave Rubin. What is it called? Don't Burn This Book by Dave Rubin. Here it is, our final part of the review, chapters 6 and 7. I read these two chapters, and this is a bit of a roller coaster. These two chapters they're the perfect little salty, sweet and salty. You get a little bit of sweet, and then you get an immediate mouthful of salty. And I love it. This is classic. It starts off with this section, chapter 6 is called Never Surrender to the Mob. Never surrender to the mob. And remember, this book is all about sort of like, there are these jerks out there who they're woke. These people are all woke, and they're just horrible, and they're mean, and all they want to do is make you feel bad, and they're all kind of like crazy, and they don't really know anything, but they're just sort of driven by pure insanity. And Dave Rubin is like fighting these people, I guess, and he found his way out of it by going to, I guess, what would you call like the kind of your typical American right-winger sort of thing. So in this section, this chapter 6, Never Surrender to the Mob, it's actually, this one, I kind of, again, there's parts of this book where I'm like, this is a human being. Like, I don't want to just rip through this book and make fun of this guy and treat him like a piece of shit and just say, ooh, be an idiot much? Ha ha ha. And then try to get somebody to click like on that, because I think that that's dumb. And again, like this chapter, he's talking about basically he had a kind of a rare disease where he loses his hair, basically. I didn't even know what this disease is. Here, I'll read a little bit from it. We're still, he's talking about the doctor who's examining him. She can tell by the existing patterns on my scalp that it's moving toward my face and may soon spread to the rest of my body, including my genitals. Great, I think. Just what I've always wanted. Bald balls. So that's, look, this whole time I was like, man, people rip this guy on the internet. He's a human being. He's a human, this is what I'm thinking the whole time. He's a human being. He has to deal with all the problems that we have to, of, weird things happening and diseases and embarrassment and all this stuff. And then he goes into, he kind of switches it into something totally different. One afternoon, a couple of weeks before my symptoms started to appear, my phone blew up with a string of expletive-laden text messages from a friend and a former co-star of the Young Turks. Okay, so it's pretty clear. He says it's a woman who was like his sister, and she's also one of the stars of the Young Turks, so I'm pretty sure he's talking about that Anna Kasparian from the Young Turks, internet famous person. And here's what he says. She texts him, she says, your shit talking is out of control. She ranted in the first of her messages, the social justice warriors you whine about fought for your rights as a gay man. But F them, right? If they don't hate Muslims, they're worthless to you. She also writes, you're an opportunist. He's saying that he got these text messages from her. Of these alleged text messages. She hits back. You don't give a flying F about friendship. Your bigotry is very clear. It's what your entire career is about now. So basically, it's what we can only assume is this woman from the Young Turks, Anna Kasparian, saying, hey, you're a piece of shit. She's being pretty intense with him. And this whole time I was thinking, like, I'm having a hard time siding with her because, again, my whole assessment of Dave Rubin is that he's a guy looking for a career. Okay, so Anna Kasparian from the Young Turks is saying all this stuff to him. It's pretty intense. She's really being mad at him. She's being angry. She's being very mean. She's being a little bit mean, but with reason, with good reason. This dude's like having a bunch of racists on his show and stuff. This was the very first time I'd personally experienced the left's absolute hatred for dissent. And it truly hurt. Their level of disgust resonated with me for days, and to some extent felt like a weird form of PTSD. I'm still kind of feeling a little bit for Dave Rubin here. This poor dude has to deal with this horrible disease. One of his best friends is mad at him because he's doing weird shit on the internet. I get it, okay? I don't agree with you, Dave, on pretty much everything, but I'm definitely feeling for you. But this thing about the absolute hatred for dissent, I don't know that it's a hatred of dissent. I mean, I think people can have different ideas. I don't think Anna Kasparian is mad at you because your ideas are different. I think she's mad because they're kind of going a little bit in a weird right-wingy kind of not a kind of antisocial, a little bit on the racist side. So yeah, this chapter in general, it's him. He goes more into dealing with this horrible disease. He really wanted to give up on his career. It threw a wrench in his career. He was supposed to have a big deal with Larry King, yada yada. And yeah, the whole time I'm like, Dave Rubin, I feel for you. I really feel for you. I don't want this to happen to you. I don't want you to have any hard times. I don't want you to have to deal with some illness. I'm on board. Pretty much this whole chapter, even the Anna Kasparian stuff, I'm like, this is a lot to deal with. This is annoying, and I feel bad for you. You're getting me on your side with this narrative. But then, again, after the sweet comes the salty. After the delicious sort of palate cleanser from previous chapters of the book, we go right into kind of anchovies or something, or just some rotten fish or something to ruin that palate cleanser. So this chapter 7, the next one is called Stop Hating Straight White Men, America, and Western Values. Okay, tell me why, Dave. Allow me to open this chapter with a statement that's wildly controversial. and gulag-worthy hate speech. America is the greatest country in the history of the world. I mean, what do I think when people say America is the greatest? What I think of is just like a little kid, like a little chubby kid, because that's the kind of thinking, that's the level of thinking you're dealing with when someone says America is the greatest country in the world. Is just like a little, like a 7-year-old or something. Not a lot of nuance to that take, but I'm stating something that not a lot of people know right now. But anyway, if you disagree with this, then you should probably ditch all your first world luxuries, including but not limited to your iPhone, PlayStation, 70-inch flat screen TV, and Netflix subscription. Okay, the first 3 things he mentions are all made in China. You love America? Well, then why don't you like all these Chinese things? Why don't you go elsewhere, he says, ideally to a place where you can feel morally superior while living in squalor or under oppressive regimes. So either you live in America or you basically live in a trash can. You live in just like a dirty trash bin, or America, and those are your 2 choices. A socialist dystopia like Venezuela would be an excellent choice, or perhaps a dictatorship such as North Korea. Oh, man. So there it is. You could either live in America, which is the best #1, or Venezuela or North Korea. Those are your choices. Those are the 2 totally in good faith choices you have. Another thing that he does in this book over and over again is he talks about celebrities he doesn't like. Woke celebrities such as Lena Dunham, Amy Schumer, and Kathy Griffin are prime examples. They all promised to emigrate if Trump won the 2016 election, but they're still here, reaping the benefits of living in an affluent, opportunity-rich country where they're safe and free, which is precisely why they never leave. He also talks about Mark Ruffalo, Mark Hamill. He's like, these are the celebrities I don't like. Oh, what does that have to do with the majority of the population who voted against Trump? I don't know, I'm Dave Rubin. Oh, here's another one. So he's shitting on all these celebrities, Kathy Griffin and Mark Ruffalo and all these people. And then he goes, see, developing your own views and speaking them, even if your voice shakes, takes tenacity. It requires conscience. It's about choosing the path of most resistance, not opting for the easier route with fewer hurdles. I mean, I guess what he's trying to say here is that, look, a lot of these celebrities, they're just in this left-wing bubble of Hollywood. But he's kind of and there's something to that. We could actually talk about that, about people who just kind of adopt a political viewpoint and don't really want to read and don't really want to look at history and don't really care and don't really want to volunteer or whatever. It's just sort of they're like, oh, other people say this, so I'll say that. Sure, that's something we could talk about. But at the same time, Dave Rubin and all these guys are all paid by all the same people who pay them to say these things. Not even to believe them, just to say them. It's usually people a really interesting case is Ben Shapiro, whose news channel was started with the money of fracking billionaires. And there's nothing bad, weirdly, interesting, nothing bad about fracking on that site. Nothing bad about fossil fuels. Weird coincidence. So, I don't know, Dave, is that a version of kind of just going along, maybe not developing your own out when it's hard? I don't know, something to think about. There's a section called Every Country Has Its Baggage. Of course, none of this means, so he goes through all these other countries and he's like, they're not good. This is why Sweden's not good. I thought he would just kind of skip over the 14 other countries that are listed as higher quality of life than the United States, but he kind of mentions some of them and he's like, well, there's a bunch of rapists in one of them. It's a bunch of sort of unsubstantiated right-wing talking point stuff. Oh, here it is. We'll actually look at the Sweden case. Okay, how about Sweden? That's the country every left-winger tells you is the model for what America should be. Well, that's fine, except the population is primarily white, which sounds pretty racist by the left's ridiculous rules. Oh, And since they've welcomed large numbers of African migrants, Dave, where are we going with this one? Sweden has struggled with assimilation is now the rape capital of Europe. I did a Snopes on this. First I started off looking where he's getting this claim from and couldn't find anything except like other right-wingers saying it. So then I finally did this Snopes fact check, and this is what they said. Just as there's no evidence supporting the claim that newly arrived refugees have caused an increase in sexual crimes in Sweden, there's also no proof that the city of Malmo is a, quote, rape capital of Europe or the world. This is, he's literally in that section just repeating something that he heard from another guy. So every country has he's like, America's the best, and all these other countries have their versions of sucking. He fails to mention, some of the things that would actually be really good if you lived in these countries, like having not worrying about healthcare and stuff like that. Weird that he would say that he would leave that out. Oh, here's another one. This section is called "Yes, Capitalism is Good," and he's talking about Amazon. Plus, here we go. Yet, in true leftist style, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez stopped Amazon from relocating to New York after scrapping any potential tax breaks. In her socialist view, Amazon is big business, and big business is inherently evil, so the deal had to be upended. I mean, I feel like when he was writing this, he's just like, who do people that would buy this book hate? Oh yeah, that girl Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. They all don't like her because she's Hispanic and kind of cute. The Atlantic actually did a pretty good write-up of this, and I'll read you a little quote. Again, this is about the Amazon coming to New York City. They wanted to build a headquarters there. They were asking for a bunch of stuff in order to do it. Not only were they doing that, they were doing this weird, like, king, I'm a king, like, what will my states do for me? What will you do for, like, a court jester running in, and he does, like, a little goofy thing. Oh, I'm Wyoming. This is what I'll do. And this company just expecting all these states to, like, compete to have them come by doing all this crazy stuff. I think they even did really goofy stuff, like, I think Cuomo said he would change his name. One state said that they would change their name to Amazon. It's just like, it really is, like, literally, basically a literal version of like a monarch having a bunch of people dance for them, for gold or something. So this is from that Atlantic write-up about that situation. This is kind of a pretty good summary. The larger truth is that corporate subsidies, including the $3 billion package offered to Amazon, are often pernicious and usually pointless. Studies show that these sorts of measures have no discernible impact on firm expansion measured by job creation. So that's the whole thing, like, oh, if they come here, we're going to have all these jobs. Oh, people are going to be swimming in jobs and money. But yeah, I've read this, I've read a couple studies about this, that it's, there's no real proof for that. Yet every year, local governments spend more than $90 billion to move headquarters and factories between states, a wasteful zero-sum exercise whose cost is more than the federal government spends on affordable housing, education, or infrastructure. So, hey, instead of throwing a bunch of money at a $1 trillion company, maybe fix your fucking roads and shit. Build some affordable housing, improve education, do some stuff that's actually going to help people instead of just shifting money around for no reason, you goofballs. Jesus. But yeah, it's Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's problem because she's a little too cute to be in Congress, and that makes me mad because I'm an old angry guy. And then he goes on to this other thing, Asian privilege, and this I love this section. I love this section because this is just an interesting. I don't know. This is just an interesting, weird, like hall of mirrors that you come into, and I'll show you why. Asian privilege. Okay, so according to that he's writing about Asian people, I guess, doing better financially or something. According to 2018 U.S. Census Bureau, as reported in the Wall Street Journal, The average household income from Asian Americans was $78,000 compared to $62 for whites, $46 for Hispanics, $37 for blacks. This isn't likely to change anytime soon, with Asian Americans more likely to have a bachelor's degree than any other race in the country. Okay. And then he says this is impressive because it's actually very impressive when you consider that most first-generation Asians moved here with very little. Interesting stuff. So Harvard Law actually did a really good paper on this. What is it called? Oh, the model minority myth. And again, it's funny. There's a name for this. It's called the model minority myth, which Dave is just rolling out. This is not a new thing. This is a copy. This is a copy of a copy of a copy. And we'll read this. As the New York Times reported this past August, income is one key area where aggregated figures are deceiving. So he's saying all this stuff about, 78 Asians, they make more than anybody else. But aggregate figures are deceiving. More specifically, despite having the highest median income of any racial group, Asian Americans also have the largest income gap of any racial group. As of 2016, the top 10th percentile of Asian Americans earns 10.7 times as much as the bottom. And this is bigger than 9.8 black, 7.8 most Hispanic or whites. Here, check this out. Indeed, he writes, this author of this Harvard Law article, indeed, in New York City, Asians experience the highest poverty rate of any immigrant group. So if you just throw up the statistic with no real kind of breakdown of what's really going on, it's a little misleading. And then there's immigration policy. Here's a quote from the same Harvard Law article. Within that 46-year time period, there were distinct waves of immigration characterized by different circumstances, including waxing and waning emphasis on family reunification and, more recently, skills and education. So there's some immigration policy at play here, too. Getting the more skilled and educated people into the country in the first place skews the numbers. It depends on country of origin, too. Okay, so another thing that's going on here with this thing is that it's sort of weird. He's just throwing all Asians together in the mix. Here's another quote from the same article. To drive home the disparities that exist within the Asian American community, the New York Times piece also plots median household income and education according to country of origin. So when in Dave's mind, or whoever wrote this book's mind, it's just Asian. There's just Asian people. There's just, what do you mean Asian? Chinese? Are they from Vietnam? No, just Asian. What do you mean Asian? What are you talking about? I mean Asian. Okay, so they also plotted this income data by country of origin, revealing Indian Americans to have the highest level on both accounts of education and income. Meanwhile, Burmese, Hmong, Laotian, and Cambodian Americans lag behind other Asian Americans on these indicators. In other words, hey, Dave, there's different kinds of Asian people. Uh-oh. He's like, what? Ew. The other funny thing about this is, so basically what he's saying, the conclusion to this whole Asian privilege thing, here I'll read you his sort of conclusion, his takeaway. Of course, this isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's actually very impressive when you consider blah, blah, okay. Blah, 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 blah. The conclusion is they came here with very little and worked their way up. So this is what this all means. It shows that the American dream is based on merit, not melanin. In other words, skin color. Here's another quote. This is from an NPR. This is really interesting. This is from an NPR article where they're talking about Andrew Sullivan, who wrote... Andrew Sullivan is like the OG Dave Rubin, I found out. And I remember seeing this guy on Bill Maher like 10 years ago. He's a gay Republican who he's basically just the old school Dave Rubin. he would say stuff that was kind of like pretty easily provable to be false, and he was just like, I just want to say it anyway. And he would go on Bill Maher, and Bill Maher would just go, okay, and dunk on him, and it was just stupid. So in this NPR article, they're talking about Andrew Sullivan, who years ago said the same thing. And he said it in New York Magazine. And this is what Andrew Sullivan, the OG Dave Rubin, wrote. Today, Asian Americans are among the most prosperous, well-educated, and successful ethnic groups in America. What gives? It couldn't possibly be that they maintained solid two-parent family structures, had social networks that looked after one another, placed enormous emphasis on education and hard work, and thereby turned false negative stereotypes into true positive ones. Could it? It couldn't be that all whites are not racist, or the American dream still lives. So he's saying literally the exact same stuff. It's so great. So then they kind of talked to some researchers and some professors about this. And this is Janelle Wong. Okay, so whatever, I'll just read the quote. Sullivan's comments showcase a classic and tenacious conservative strategy. Janelle Wong, the director of Asian American Studies at the University of Maryland, College Park, said in an email, this strategy, she said, involves 1, ignoring the role that selective recruitment of highly educated Asian immigrants has played in Asian American success, which we talked about just a second ago, and 2, making a flawed comparison between Asian Americans and other groups, particularly Black Americans, to argue that racism, including more than 2 centuries of Black enslavement, can be overcome by hard work and strong family values, which is a exact photocopy of what Dave Rubin is doing in this book. You can also there's a bunch of interesting research on this. Look up if you want to read more about this. This gets into very interesting history by this woman named Ellen Wu, who's a researcher. She wrote a paper called "The Color of Success," and it covers this model minority thing. And it's funny also that Dave Rubin is doing a bit called the model minority bit that has been done by people like Dave Rubin forever. So there you go. And that is where I think I want to leave this whole thing. Okay, except for this one quote. I'll just do this one last quote. I'll tell you why. It's because, America, what a country. I don't know where this came from. I don't know where this starts. I'll tell you why. It's because of the United States, the land of the free that allows self-expression, the pursuit of ambition, and a truly open, diverse model. Accept this graciously and use it as a force for good, rather than getting fat and lazy on the comforts that were hard-earned by people before you. Besides, even if none of this were true, which it is, America would still be the greatest country in the universe. Why? Because it created Seinfeld. Okay, pretty good. Seriously, what's not to love? Realizing there's almost nothing not to love. The left invents problems to fill the void. Okay, so the left invented like the Iraq War, the Vietnam War. I mean, you're skipping over a few things here, Dave. You're skipping over some very obvious things. I mean, I think I don't know. This is something in the mind of the kind of person who would read this book where they're just like, I want to hear good things about the place that I live. I'm tired of all this criticism. It's like a baseball player or something who, like, the coach is like, hey, you gotta choke up on that bat. You gotta swing. You gotta get that swing. You gotta get that swing a little bit higher or something like that. They're like, I'm tired of all this criticism. So in conclusion, I don't know who this book, I guess this book is targeted at people who really don't care that much about history or politics, probably. The simplicity is kind of its good thing. Its simplicity is kind of its advantage, that anybody can just start reading this and understand it. But it's very misleading. It seems to be intentionally misleading throughout the entire book. It's a right wing. It's a lot of right wing talking points, and still, I don't hate or think that Dave Rubin is a bad person. I think that what we're looking at is a document of someone who found a niche and is exploiting the niche for fame and money.